They called it a poor person's game, a scam for suckers who couldn't afford to buy things outright. But here's the thing nobody wants to tell you. Layaway, the financial tool your grandparents used and Wall Street mocked, might be the only reason they owned anything at all. While the rich were getting richer on credit, the poor were quietly building wealth on a system that forced them to do the one thing modern capitalism absolutely despises. Wait. Let me take you back to a specific moment in time. It's 1953. A woman walks into a department store in Cleveland, Ohio. Her name is Dorothy, and she's a seamstress. She makes $42 a week. She sees a winter coat in the window, navy blue wool with brass buttons. The price tag says $35. That's almost a full week of her life. She knows she can't walk out of that store with the coat today. But she also knows something else. She knows that if she gives the clerk $5 right now, they'll hold that coat for her. Every week, she'll come back. Every week, she'll hand over another $5. In 7 weeks, the coat is hers. No interest, no debt. No one owns her. This is layaway. And it's a concept so simple, so brutally effective, that it's almost disappeared from modern American life. You want to know why? Because it doesn't make anyone rich, except you. Let me paint you a picture of how we got here. The year's 1929. The stock market doesn't just crash, it implodes. It takes the entire economy with it. Banks fail overnight. People who thought they were millionaires on Monday are standing in breadlines by Friday. The Great Depression isn't just an economic crisis. It's a psychological trauma that will shape American consumer behavior for the next 3 generations. In the wreckage of that collapse, something interesting happens. People stop trusting credit, not because they're financially sophisticated, but because they've watched their neighbors lose everything to debt. They've seen foreclosures. They've seen repossessions. They've seen men in suits show up at front doors to take back furniture, cars, even wedding rings. So, retailers have a problem. People are terrified to borrow money, but people still need things. Winter coats, school shoes for children, a new stove when the old one finally dies. The economy can't function if nobody buys anything, but it also can't function if everyone goes into debt and defaults. Someone, and history doesn't record exactly who, comes up with a solution. What if we let people pay over time, but we don't give them the product until they've paid in full? What if we remove the risk entirely? You can't default on something you don't own yet. You can't lose something that isn't in your house. They start calling it layaway. The store lays the item away for you. It sits in a back room with your name on it. Every week or every month, you make a payment. When the balance hits 0, you take it home. If you can't finish paying, you don't get the item. You might lose a small fee, but you don't go into collections. You don't damage your credit. You don't owe anyone a single penny beyond what you already paid. It's brilliant. It's safe. And for decades, it works. Walk through any American department store in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, even into the 60s and 70s, and you'll see the layaway counter. It's usually near the back. There's a clerk with a ledger, rows of tags and tickets, a whole system built on trust and delayed gratification. Poor families use it. Working-class families use it. Even some middle-class families use it when they're saving for something big. A refrigerator, a television set, Christmas presents in November, so they're paid off by December 25th. It becomes a ritual. Every Friday after work, you stop by the store. You make your payment. You check in on your item. Sometimes the clerk lets you look at it, touch it. Remind yourself why you're doing this. But here's what nobody tells you about layaway. It's not just a purchasing method. It's a forced savings account. Every time Dorothy put $5 toward that coat, she was doing something radical. She was delaying gratification. She was proving to herself that she could commit to a goal. She was building a habit that compound over time. Because once you've done it for a coat, you can do it for anything. A car, a house, a future. Layaway was training wheels for wealth building. And the beautiful irony is that it was designed for people who supposedly didn't know how to manage money. Now, let me show you what happened next. The year is 1958. A small company in California introduces something new. It's a piece of plastic, about the size of a playing card. On one side, your name. On the other, a string of numbers. They call it a credit card, not a charge card, where you pay the balance in full at the end of the month. A credit card, where you can carry a balance, where you can pay a little bit each month, where you can, for the first time in human history, buy something today and owe money on it for years. The pitch is seductive. Why wait 7 weeks for that coat when you can wear it tonight? Why save up when you can have it now? The future you will pay. The future you will handle it. The banks and the credit card companies promise convenience. They promise freedom. They promise dignity. No more standing at the layaway counter like some kind of beggar. You're a valued customer now. You have purchasing power. You're a participant in the great American economy. But here's what they don't tell you. Every single month you carry a balance, you're paying interest. 15%, 18%, 22%, sometimes more. That $35 coat, if you put it on a credit card and only make minimum payments, it costs you $50, $60, $70. You're paying almost twice the price for the privilege of having it now instead of later. And here's the even darker part. The credit card companies know exactly what they're doing. They've studied human psychology. They've run the numbers. They know that when you swipe a piece of plastic, it doesn't feel like spending money. There's no physical pain, no cash leaving your hand, no envelope getting lighter. It's just a card. A signature, a receipt you'll throw away. The transaction is abstract. The debt is invisible until the bill comes. And by then, you've already swiped the card 10 more times. The shift happens slowly. Through the 1960s and 70s, credit cards become normal, then common, then expected. Retailers start offering store credit cards. Oil companies offer gas cards. Airlines offer travel cards. By the 1980s, you're nobody if you don't have credit. The entire economy restructures itself around consumer debt. And layaway starts to disappear. Not all at once, but gradually. Stores stop promoting it. They move the counter to a worse location. They add fees. They make the terms less favorable. By the 1990s, it's almost gone. The department stores that built their empires on layaway now make more money on their store credit cards than on the actual merchandise they sell. Let me give you a specific example. A major retailer, I won't name them, but you know who they are, makes 23% of their annual profit from credit card interest and fees. 23%. They're not a store anymore. They're a bank that happens to sell clothing. The clothing is bait. The real product is debt. You walk in thinking you're buying a shirt. You're actually buying a monthly payment plan that will cost you double what that shirt is worth. Now here's where it gets personal. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you owned something outright before you brought it home? I don't mean a candy bar. I mean something real. An appliance, a piece of furniture, an electronic device. If you're under 40 years old, the answer is probably never. You've been conditioned your entire life to believe that debt is normal, that payments are just part of life, that everyone carries balances on credit cards, that a car loan is responsible financial planning, that a mortgage is the only way to own a home. You've been taught that waiting is for suckers, that delayed gratification is outdated, that you deserve to have what you want when you want it. But let me tell you what really happened. They didn't give you freedom. They gave you a leash, a very long, very comfortable leash. Long enough that you don't feel it most of the time. But it's there. Every month, you make payments to the credit card company, to the auto loan company, to the student loan servicer, to the mortgage lender. You're not building wealth. You're servicing debt. And the difference between those two things is the difference between freedom and slavery. Dorothy, the seamstress from Cleveland, she understood something that we've forgotten. Ownership isn't about possession. It's about obligation. When you buy something with cash or with fully paid layaway, you own it. The store can't take it back. The bank has no claim on it. It's yours, free and clear. But when you buy something on credit, you don't own it. The bank owns it. You're just renting it from them at an exorbitant rate until you've paid off the loan. And if you miss a payment, they take it back. They damage your credit score. They send you to collections. They sue you. They garnish your wages. The thing you thought you owned was never yours at all. Here's the really twisted part. The modern financial system has convinced you that debt is a tool, that leverage is smart, that good debt exists. They've got you believing that a mortgage is good debt because real estate appreciates, that a car loan is acceptable because you need transportation to work, that student loans are an investment in your future. And sure, there are scenarios where those arguments hold water. But let me ask you this. If debt is such a great tool, why are the banks and credit card companies making record profits? Why are Americans carrying more consumer debt than ever before in history? Why does the average household owe over $8,000 on credit cards alone? I'll tell you why. Because debt isn't a tool for you. It's a tool for them. It's the mechanism by which they extract wealth from your labor for decades. Let me take you to another moment. It's 2008. The housing market collapses. Millions of Americans lose their homes to foreclosure. The banks that gave out subprime mortgages to people who couldn't afford them, they get bailed out. Hundreds of billions of dollars in taxpayer money. But the families who lost their homes, they get nothing. No bailout. No second chance. Just a black mark on their credit report and a forwarding address at a cheaper apartment. And the entire crisis happened because we abandoned the layaway logic. We abandoned the idea that you should only buy what you can afford. We bought into the myth that home prices only go up, that you could borrow against your future forever, that debt was wealth. Now I want to show you something that's going to make you uncomfortable. Let's say you make $50,000 a year. That's roughly the median household income in America. After taxes, you're taking home maybe $40,000. That's $3,300 a month. Now let's add up your payments: rent or mortgage, car payment, car insurance, health insurance, credit card, minimum payments, student loans, utilities, phone bill, internet, streaming services, subscriptions you forgot you signed up for. By the time you're done, how much is left? A few $100s, maybe? And that's supposed to cover food, gas, clothing, entertainment, emergencies, and God forbid you want to save for retirement. You're not living, you're treading water. And every month, you're one unexpected expense away from going under. A medical bill, a car repair, a broken appliance, anything. And when that expense hits, what do? You put it on a credit card, because you have no other choice. The credit card was supposed to be for emergencies, but now the emergency is your entire life. You're caught in a cycle, working to make payments on things you've already consumed, never getting ahead, never building real wealth, just servicing debt until you die. This is what they don't teach you in school. They teach you algebra. They teach you the dates of historical battles. But they don't teach you that the modern economy is designed to keep you poor. Not homeless on the street poor, but paycheck to paycheck poor. Just comfortable enough that you don't revolt. Just scared enough that you keep working. The system needs you in debt because debt makes you compliant. A person with no debt can walk away from a bad job. A person with no debt can take risks. A person with no debt can say no. But a person with debt? A person with a mortgage and a car loan and credit card balances? That person has to show up every day, no matter how miserable, no matter how exploitative, because the payments are due. Layaway was dangerous to this system, not because it was perfect, but because it taught people to wait, to save, to live within their means, to separate wants from needs. Those are subversive ideas in a consumer economy. The economy doesn't grow when people wait. It grows when people buy, now, today, more than they can afford. The credit card solved this problem beautifully. It turned patience into a vice and impulsivity into a virtue. So, what do we do? How do we escape? Let me be very clear. I'm not telling you to cut up your credit cards and live in a cave. I'm not preaching some kind of financial martyrdom. But I'm telling you to recognize the game you're playing. Every time you buy something on credit, you're making a choice. You're choosing immediate gratification over future freedom. You're choosing to rent your life from a bank, and that choice might be necessary sometimes, but it should never be automatic. It should never be comfortable. Here's what the layaway system understood that we've forgotten. There is power in waiting. There is dignity in delayed gratification. When you save up for something and then buy it outright, you own it in a way that goes beyond legal title. You own it because you earned it, because you sacrificed for it, because you proved to yourself that you're stronger than your impulses. That's not just financial advice. That's a different way of being human. Let me give you a practical framework. Before you buy anything that costs more than 1 week of your take-home pay, institute your own personal layaway system. Open a separate savings account. Put money into it every week or every month. Watch the balance grow. When you've saved enough to buy the thing outright, then buy it. If you lose interest before you've saved enough, you've just learned something valuable. You didn't really want it. You wanted the feeling of wanting it. You wanted the dopamine hit of clicking purchase, but you didn't want the thing itself. And now you have money in the bank instead of another monthly payment. This is harder than it sounds. Your brain is going to fight you. It's been trained for decades to expect instant gratification. The first few times you try this, you're going to feel deprived. You're going to rationalize. You're going to tell yourself it's just one purchase, that you'll pay it off quickly, that the interest isn't that bad. But I'm telling you, every single time you resist, you're building a muscle. The muscle of self-control. The muscle of future orientation. The muscle that separates people who build wealth from people who service debt. And here's what happens when you start living this way. At first, nothing. You're going to feel like you're falling behind. Everyone around you has new cars and new phones and new furniture, and you're still driving your old car and waiting to save up. But then something shifts. 6 months in, a year in, you realize you're sleeping better. You're not anxious about bills. When your credit card statement comes, the balance is 0, or close to it. You have money in savings, real money, enough to handle an emergency without panicking. And then you realize something else. You have options. You can negotiate at work because you're not desperate. You can take a chance on a new opportunity because you have a cushion. You can say no to things that don't serve you. You're not free. Not yet. But you're freer. And that feeling is worth more than any purchase you could ever make. The layaway system wasn't perfect. It had fees sometimes. It was inconvenient. It required discipline and planning. But it had one feature that modern credit will never have. It kept you out of debt. It forced you to live within your means. It taught you to separate the things you needed from the things you wanted. And most importantly, it gave you ownership. Real ownership, not leveraged ownership. Not debt-financed ownership, the kind of ownership where you bring something home and nobody can take it away from you. That's the secret they don't want you to know. Wealth isn't built on credit. It's built on ownership, on assets you control, on money you've actually saved instead of money you've promised to pay back someday. The rich understand this. They use debt strategically when it makes mathematical sense, but they don't live in debt. They don't carry balances on credit cards. They don't finance depreciating assets. They buy appreciating assets with saved capital, and they buy everything else with cash. Meanwhile, they've convinced the rest of us that debt is normal, that payments are just part of life, that we're somehow backwards if we want to wait and save. Dorothy, the seamstress, died in 1991. By then, Layaway was already fading. Credit cards had won. The financial system had successfully transformed an entire generation from savers into debtors. But here's what I think about sometimes. Dorothy owned that navy blue coat for 38 years. She wore it every winter. She had it repaired twice. When she died, her daughter inherited it. A coat that cost $35. No interest, no payments after those initial 7 weeks. Just a coat that lasted a lifetime. Compare that to the modern consumer who buys a new coat every few years on a credit card, pays interest, and never quite feels like they own anything. I'm not naive enough to think we can turn back time. The layaway counter isn't coming back. The financial system has moved on. But the logic behind layaway? That's timeless. Wait before you buy. Save before you spend. Own before you borrow. These aren't revolutionary ideas. They're ancient wisdom that we abandoned because it wasn't profitable enough for the banks. But it was profitable for you. It built wealth for people who supposedly couldn't build wealth. It gave dignity to people who supposedly had none. It proved that the poor weren't poor because they were stupid or undisciplined. They were poor because they didn't have money. And when you gave them a system that worked with their constraints instead of against them, they thrived. The question isn't whether you can afford to adopt layaway logic. The question is whether you can afford not to. Every month you carry a balance, you're bleeding wealth. Every purchase you finance, you're mortgaging your future. Every payment you make, you're choosing the bank's freedom over your own. This isn't a moral judgment. This is mathematics. The numbers don't lie. Debt makes you poorer. Ownership makes you richer. It's that simple. And it's that hard. Because simple doesn't mean easy. Simple means you have to face the truth. The truth that you probably can't afford your current lifestyle. The truth that you've been living beyond your means. The truth that the shiny things you bought on credit didn't make you happy. They made you anxious. So here's my challenge to you. For the next 90 days, don't buy anything on credit that you couldn't afford to buy with cash. If you can't afford it with cash, you can't afford it. Period. Put it on your personal layaway list. Save for it. If you still want it in 90 days and you've saved enough, buy it. If you don't, keep the money. Let it grow. Let it become your emergency fund, your opportunity fund, your freedom fund. And watch what happens to your relationship with money. Watch how your stress decreases. Watch how your sense of control increases. Watch how you stop feeling like a victim of the economy and start feeling like a participant in your own life. The system wants you in debt. It profits from your desperation. It feeds on your impulsivity. It grows stronger every time you swipe that card. But you don't have to play. You can opt out. Not completely. Not perfectly. But enough to matter. Enough to start building real wealth instead of just servicing payments. Enough to remember what Dorothy knew in 1953 when she walked into that department store in Cleveland. That waiting is powerful. That ownership is freedom. That the best things in life aren't bought on credit. They're earned through patience. That navy blue coat is probably in a landfill somewhere now, but the lesson it taught? That's still worth learning. The poor person's habit that built wealth wasn't a trick. It wasn't a scheme. It was just the simple, brutal truth. If you can't afford it, wait, save, then buy it, and never, ever owe anyone for the privilege of having something today instead of tomorrow. Because tomorrow always comes. And when it does, you want to own your life, not rent it from a bank.